What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Revenue Systems Decoded podcast. And today's guest is Marie Martens, co-founder of Tally, one of the fastest growing bootstrap SaaS products in the world of no-code. Marie went from running a service-based startup to building a form builder that now serves 1.4 million users, generates over $4 million in ARR, and does it all with a tiny team, no VC money, no paid ads, and a radically generous freemium model. What makes Tally and Marie especially interesting for this show is that Tally didn't grow because of some growth hack. It grew because of a clean revenue system, product-led growth, content done in public, distribution backed into the product itself, and a conversion model where users want to pay. So in this episode, we are going to break down how Marie turned a free product into a serious business, how content and transparency became her acquisition engine, and how unexpected channels like ChatGPT now drive a meaningful share of signups. So if you care about sustainable SaaS growth, monetizing attention without burning trust, and building revenue systems that scale without complexity, this episode will be a treat. So happy to have you on the show, Marie. For those who don't know you, if you had to introduce yourself, how would you do it?
Yeah, thanks for the nice introduction, Olivier, and thanks for having me. You already said a lot. But yeah, my name is Marie. I founded Tally together with Philip in 2020. Philip is my technical co-founder, but also my partner in life. We have 2 kids together. We're based in Ghent, Belgium, and I have a background in mainly B2B marketing. I've never really worked at a startup before. So it was like more corporates, agencies, and then decided to do my own thing in 2020. And that's how I ended up here.
Amazing. So now 5 years further and still no divorce. So that's a good sign,
That's a
I think.
really good sign. Yeah, I think that's the best sign.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, if you had to break Tully's growth kind of down into a system rather than a story, what would you say are like the core parts that drive your growth early and today?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. It's kind of hard to explain the PLG motion without the early days. I think like year 1 was a bit different, and that's everything that happened before the product started selling itself, so to speak. And I guess basically we didn't have money, we didn't have an audience, didn't have any customers to sell to, but we had the idea of building Tally. And I think what was important in the early days is that we started building and shipping really fast. So we actually started doing cold outreach and finding people that might be interested in using our products. And we thought we were building this product for ourselves. We were the buyer personas, and we love like tools like a Notion, that have a very clean interface. So we were pretty focused on the UX of the tool. And we thought if we can make forms a bit less boring and more fun to use, how would that look like? So we're targeting, I would say, more founders, people in products, people maybe with a bit more of a technical background. And we found those on Product Hunt. And we would basically just check if you would have upvoted a form builder or any other tool in the no-code space, that you would get in my list. All of this was manual, so no tips there. And this was before Clay or any of that kind of software existed. And I would just make lists and I would send them DMs and say, hey, we're building this. And so in the meantime, Philip was building, and we had the super, super scrappy MVP of Tally, which was just the form editor, the builder, where you could play and you couldn't publish a form, you couldn't log in. There was no landing page. It was just the form builder. And I would start sharing this with people. So if we'd go to tally.so, it would just be immediately you're building a form. And I would just say, hey, we're building this. And I thought you might be interested. And I would love your feedback because of your background of XYZ. And we did this. So it was very simple. We did this for 6 months, day in, day out. So I sent DMs to thousands of people. It was a big sheet. I actually don't have it anymore. But the conversion rate, we also didn't keep track of everything very well, but it was pretty high for cold outreach. So I think around 1 out of 5 people would reply.
Yes.
And they would be like, hey, this is cool. I want to play with it, or I want to give you feedback. And those people would join a Slack channel. And we still have that Slack channel. It has like 3,000 people, and those are the earliest Tally users. And that gave us like super short feedback loops. So we instantly learned what they liked, what they didn't like, what we should improve. And so that was the first like 6 months. And that got us to, I think, 1,000 users. Important to mention that the product was free, right? So very low barrier to try it out. And then we thought like, oh, okay, I think we have all the like basic features that a form builder would need. And we launched it on Product Hunt, which at the time was the platform where we found our early users. And that was like the small growth push that we needed, because we like doubled the user base in one day. And after that, we didn't have to do cold outreach anymore because the users started coming in. And that is all because of the second big part of the system. The biggest part of the system is the fact that forms are viral by nature. You make them to share with someone else. And because we made the deliberate decision to make the product largely free, everyone who creates a free form has a made with Tally badge on that form. And so if you make a form, you share it with other people, those people get to know our brand and our product through the form and through the experience of them filling out the form. And once we had that critical mass of 1,000, 2,000 people sharing forms, the product started spreading and it started selling itself. So the product-led growth kicked in, and we decided to make a pretty unconventional decision pricing wise, because we offered unlimited forms and unlimited submissions for free. And that's something that at the time no one really did, except for Google Forms, which is free but not as customizable. And so we thought, if we can make the economics work, we will just give it away for free and see what happens. And that's what we still do until today. And so from all those free users, around 2% converts to Tally Pro, and that is how we make money. And Tally Pro is the paid plan, where you can, remove the branding, right? Which is our biggest growth engine, invite team members, have more advanced customization, etc. So I think those are the two core blocks, like how we found our first users and then how the product-led growth and that engine works. I think a third thing that supports the growth is that we've always been very transparent about our journey. And so we've been building in public since day one. So numbers, highs, lows, everything is documented on the blog. And in the early days, we just did it because we were active on the Indie Hackers platform. And there it's pretty normal to just plug in your Stripe account and everyone sees your revenue and you just share your learnings. And that's how we learned a lot. And after a while, I thought, hey, we can also do this on other platforms. So we started sharing updates on social media. And at first it was mostly Twitter, but now, like LinkedIn became a lot bigger. And we started doing that and building some kind of personal audience as well. And I guess now it's called, founder-led marketing and all of that, but it just kind of started in a very simple way. So yeah, I think those are the main things if I would need to break it down in a system.
Yeah, that was actually an amazing breakdown. You basically started by going to hunt for potential users, right? And you made kind of a smart thinking, or you were looking for like people who were already kind of interested in that or such solutions, right? By going to Product Hunt, looking manually through people who upvoted, right? And then I guess kind of somehow deciphering who those people were, or did you just DM them in Product Hunt themselves directly?
No, because you cannot DM in Product Hunt. So it was like, can I find that person on Twitter and do they have DMs? It was a very slow process. Can I find an email address? Can I just tweet to them? So it was, a manual labor. Yeah.
Yeah, but amazing. And that's, I mean, you have to do that and then figure it out, right? And so then, because you're also bootstrapped, right? Together with your partner, you have 2 kids. Did you do this while you were still working this whole validation process, or was it really all in from day one?
Good question. Actually, Tally is not the first startup that we have built together. We started with Hotspot, and Hotspot was something like an idea that started as a side project. It was a marketplace that connects travel influencers and hotel owners. So with the idea that as a travel influencer, you could register, you can connect with hotels, the hotels can find people that want to create content for their place. And that's how you set up a collaboration. Completely different space. And we had this idea, it was like around 2019. We started building it on the side. And then in 2020, we decided to go full in because we had some traction. We had our first paying customers, a couple of KMRR. So we thought like we can, we can figure out how to scale this if we go full in. Unfortunately, we didn't know that at the time. Early 2020 was the worst time in history to launch a startup in travel tech because COVID hit. And we also wanted to become digital nomads. So we were on a plane to Bali. Obviously, we never made it there because we had a first stop in Bangkok. And then after 1 week, the lockdown started and we had to actually fly back. So we were back after 1 week. Like we had rented out everything. We had these big travel plans. It never happened. And then we worked on it for a few more months and then realized this is going to take way too long. We lost all our customers. We need to pivot. We need to just start over. And that's when we came up with the idea of building Tally. So we work all in because we had already quit our jobs for the other project. So we were, working full time on it from the start, so to speak. We ran the two businesses for a while together, I think for a small year actually, but then, when Tally once it started growing.
Okay, amazing. And is there any part of this, let's say, growth, right, that you've experienced the last 5 years that now looks obvious, right? But it wasn't at all obvious when you were building it.
I think everything I'm saying now sounds obvious, but wasn't during at the time. Like, because we build in public, I take a lot of time to reflect and write out and decipher the systems, but that always comes afterwards. So when you're in it, it's not like you have this clear system in your head. Like, we made the deliberate choice to build a product that could sell itself. Like, we didn't want anything sales heavy, so it had to be PLG. So that was like kind of strategic, but we had no idea how it would play out, right? We had no idea if we could scale it, how big the team would need to be, if we would even manage to, get some people on it. So that was all, pretty YOLO from our side. So I think the beginning was everything. I think the beginning was a very hard part because you just keep on sending DMs and you do get feedback, but you don't know where this is going. You're not making any money. And then I think in year 2, we kind of suddenly realized and it suddenly clicked like, oh, there's actually 3 things that make Tally Tally. And that's that Tally is free. And that is actually the core. That it's simple. And it's simple in everything we do, not just the product, but also the design, the communication, but also in how we work. And that allows us to build it with a small team. And that Tally is us, right? It's a personal brand. We build in public, we share everything, we put our users first. It's pretty, I think, transparent. And I think in year 2, we actually wrote that down. We can find it on the blog. And that helped a lot because it became a bit of a decision framework as well. Like if anything new doesn't fit in there, it's probably not a good idea. But all of that always comes like
In
a few
hindsight.
months in hindsight. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
But I think it's great that you reflect so often and that then helps you to make decisions and even refer back to, right? And it's one thing I've been thinking personally about a lot because we help SaaS companies grow, but oftentimes I'm like, or even when I find myself building like a revenue system, I'm like, this is becoming way too complicated. Like this can't
Yeah.
be necessary, right? So I think simplicity is really what also then enables you to, first of all, have such a small team and makes the product sticky because, to put it frankly, less buttons means less bugs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Simplicity it's super important because it's indeed less buttons, less bugs, but it doesn't, it's also, I think it's also the hardest thing to crack. And it's because you have to say no to 1,000 good ideas, things that it also means saying no to revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't really invest in any paid, in ads. I'm sure we could do more, we could do better, but you just cannot do it all, and you cannot do it well all at the same time. And the same goes for products. It's making sure that the product stays focused. So what you see most competitors do is they add more products, right? And you build more horizontally and you add more products or services. And we don't do that. And that's very rare, I think. It might also look like, oh, they're just leaving money on the table. But I actually think it's our superpower, because it enables us to do just a few things really well. And it helps you to focus, and it helps you to build with a small team. But you have to keep things simple. And it's an everyday work, like where we need to like hold back and say, wait, this is way too complex. How can I simplify this? How can I build something that is ready today and not next week? It's a simpler version, but it will be faster. How can we're working on SEO, GEO right now. Like, how can I take small steps? Like, what can I do today where I will see the effect next week, instead of saying, I'm going to rewrite our whole, content strategy. And that's really like a constant muscle practice or something like that. But it helps us. It helps us to focus and to keep things simple, and to make sure that everyone understands what we're working on, why we say no to certain things. So simplicity is key, I would say, but I think it's super hard. And I notice it for myself every day, where I like get carried away in projects, and then I just need to, pull myself back and say, why are you doing this? It's not necessary at all. And there's some playtime once in a while, but usually we're quite strict on time management and keeping things simple. Yeah,
That's nice. The not now list must be bigger than the to-do list then.
yeah, yes,
That's amazing. And yeah, I mean, touching shortly upon pricing and the choice to have the free tier, but then also only one paid tier, right? Where also people like Rob Walling have said you could double your revenue overnight, right? And left money on the table there.
yeah,
Obviously, it's a conscious choice, right? So can you like walk us through, first of all, like, especially early days, little amount of MRR, again, two founders all in, partners,
yeah,
children, what goes through
yeah.
your head when you make that decision? Like, we're going to keep it free and only have one paid option.
Yeah. The free part, and it was hard, especially I think it took a year before we paid like one minimum salary for the both of us. That was like what we did after 1 year. And that was the biggest milestone ever, because, you could feel like, wait, maybe this can be more. Maybe we can actually turn this into, a business that can pay the bills. That's how we were looking at it. And I must say Philip was the strongest factor there, because I got annoyed after a while. I was like, we're giving everything away for free. We're not earning money. We're putting in so much time and effort, and then sometimes you get shitty feedback, from people, and you need to, you need to really be able to think long term. Obviously, one thing that helped is that we had to do things different than VC-backed competitors. So just doing the same thing wasn't going to work anyway, because we don't have the budgets, we don't have the team, like we cannot outmarket or outship them anyway. So we had to do something drastically different, and pricing was the most powerful factor there, and it also helped us grow. So it was kind of a no-brainer to stick to it. I think in year 3, it became hard because we hadn't grown the team, but the user base grew a lot. And because of the free tier, we were doing a lot of support because we offer customer support to everyone. And we waited way too long with hiring, also because, there's not a lot of money in the business in the beginning. And then we were just doing support, and we couldn't work on the product anymore. And that was the hardest year of Tally, because you feel stuck.
Yeah.
The pricing, still, we didn't change it, and I'm happy we still didn't. We just also went for the one plan. We actually have two now, but there's one plan that is important. That's Tally Pro. It's priced at $29 a month. We priced it we just looked at competitors and saw what their cheapest plan was, and we just took that number. And it also hasn't changed. So we haven't touched this, because we believe it's important and at the core of what Tally is. And why not several tiers? Again, simplicity. We had to implement them. We had to like move features around, and we just thought, let's just do one. And in the end, we're always building for ourselves. So when I see a product and it has a very complicated pricing system, I run away. Like, I'm like, how much is this really going to cost? Oh, it's this much, but I need to add credits because it's volume based. And I just don't think that's a nice user experience. Like, I love to just know upfront, how much am I going to pay? And then I don't mind paying. And so that simplicity again came back because it's also just the way we want to be treated as users or as customers. So it's more of a belief as well system. And again, it's not optimizing for revenue, but it's optimizing for the best experience and just believing that the numbers will follow. And so that was the idea behind the pricing. And then last year we thought, we actually deviated a bit from our principles and we thought, hey, let's introduce Tally Business, higher price tier. And we did it, but we never really focused on it. And also from the start, it didn't feel like Tally, it just doesn't match our story, I think, and our pricing plans. So it's still there, but I don't even know if we will keep it. It's definitely not a focus. And I think that also proves that, again, keep it simple. Don't change what works. Yeah, just sticking to something over a longer period of time, might work. And obviously, I'm not saying that everyone should just have one pricing tier, but it's what worked for us for several reasons.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, amazing. And you already touched upon it shortly. Marie already mentioned it. And I also find it kind of interesting to see that, there's others in the space. We won't name names, but it ends in form. And they have a lot of money. And essentially, they have a free plan, but it's quite limiting, right? So that was obviously an intentional strategy, at least to get a big user base, or at least to lower the barrier of trying out Tally, right? And so are there any other things that you intentionally did not do in terms of growth or monetizing, even though others in the space were or are doing it?
Almost everything. We haven't, I mean, you mean product wise or more growth, like marketing wise?
Yeah, marketing wise, growth wise. Yeah.
Because for I think the first 3, almost 4 years was just us two. And I was mainly doing customer support. So there wasn't a lot of marketing happening. We had like 5 like comparison pages. They're actually still the ones that perform the best today, like free Typeform alternative. And those did okay for us because Typeform raised its prices after a few years after we launched. And obviously it left a huge gap in the market for us. And we definitely felt that. But I always believed that the most genuine way of doing marketing is to show up whenever someone needs you and whenever someone has a problem. So the core has always been just me and then now the team being very active on Reddit, social media, and other forums and just answering questions and pitching Tally wherever it could be relevant. And to call it social listening now, but it's basically, is anyone looking for a forum builder and they have a problem and they share it on Reddit, then we would be there to answer, try to help and to say, hey, I'm building Tally, maybe you might find it useful. And that's something we did from the start and is actually becoming only more important right now, especially with LLMs picking up those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something we did do. What we didn't do is ads. We didn't have elaborate content strategy. Like only now we're optimizing our help center for SEO. Like we will turn 5 this year. So a lot of things we didn't do. We didn't do partnerships. We would not do any events in the first years. Like I would occasionally go speak somewhere, but like max 3 times a year because it's a big time investment, but we would not sponsor anything.
Mm.
We would not partner. We would obviously build integrations with tools. And if they would promote us, that would be great, but nothing else really. So it's all been pretty organic. And I think the social listening and the building in public have been the core of the strategy. And the more we grow, the more I believe in them. And the more I believe in also not doing the other ones because channels are getting pretty saturated and there's just some things that we cannot win. So I'm like, let's not even try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Choose your battles.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And does that also translate into how you're like combining building features and thinking about distributing them or
Yeah, I think in the start we would also focus on building as many free features that we could because we knew it would help us grow faster. And then we started focusing more on customization because we knew that that is why people would choose Tally because they want professionally, nicely designed forms. So those were definitely decisions that helped with distribution, but that came from the product side. Same with we have payment forms, so you can sell products with a Tally form, and we would take a commission on those, and we actually skip the commission, so we just offer them for free right now, and because other players don't do it. We offer custom domains, which is something that's very expensive for competitors. We offer them so very, very deliberate choices there in product that will help us grow on the longer term.
amazing. So the custom domain ones is an intentional feature for distribution, basically. It
Yes,
was at
it's
least
also something that not a lot of people offered also
Mhm.
at the time.
Yeah,
So yeah, definitely.
yeah, it was what made me sign up a couple of months ago, honestly.
Look,
And like because of doing that short promo, you can also it really looks like it's like almost part of your website
yeah,
because you can really also customize the look and feel and the brand, right? And we are also huge Notion users, so like
yeah.
I think it's better than Notion forms, more interactive, but you can also link it to their database system and things like that. So,
Yeah, and I actually, that's something in the system that I forgot to mention, but Notion has been really important in how we launched Tally as well, because in the early days, like those early adopters that I was targeting on Product Hunt, a part of those were Notion ambassadors. Notion ambassadors and Notion users in general love Tally because of the similar interface and because of how it works together. So people would embed their Tally forms. This was before Notion forms existed, embed Tally forms or indeed send their form submissions to Notion, but also share their tool stack online, and then Tally would be part of it. So we definitely also try to target or cater to those Notion ambassadors because they would then also promote Tally as part of their no-code stack, and especially combined with Notion. So I think if we if you launch a form builder today, that becomes more difficult to use that audience. But it's definitely something that helped us back in the day. We
yeah,
sound old now.
well, time flies if you're having fun, I guess.
Yes.
So, okay, amazing. And when you look at growth channels, right, and you've mentioned like it's always based on helping, right, and
Yeah.
providing value first, coming from a also eat your own dog food perspective, right? But do you, when you look at signals or when you reflect on certain growth channels, like what is kind of your decision making framework on deciding to double down or ignore or abandon some?
I think for us, first of all, it needs to be doable with a team of, it's still one person right now, 1.5 person working on marketing. So, a lot of things are just not possible. But then again, it is also in a very organic way what fits Tally, like community building, for example, is something that is important for us. It's something that I personally believe in, and more in person, in real life connections that support your brand. And so for us, it has also always been about how can we spotlight the people that use Tally? How can we give back? And how can we connect those people to our brand? And so if we do, for example, influencer collabs, we will usually only work with real Tally users. people who actually know the product, who probably have shared it before, and people that actually love it as well. And so I think you can tell, and it translates into the content. So that's something that just feels like a no-brainer for Tally and feels authentic. So, okay, we'll do more of that. Optimizing for LLMs or GEO or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, we've seen a massive growth peak last year where we suddenly had thousands of people per week coming from ChatGPT. Obviously, then you'll be like, hey, this is interesting. How can we get even more? Or how can we recreate this? Because we had a really big peak, and it also very suddenly stopped when ChatGPT 5 was introduced. And we have some ideas, but we don't know. I know a lot of companies saw the same effect. And when you've experienced that growth, you also, you want to recreate it. And so obviously that's something we're working on now. Like, how can we make sure that we optimize our visibility, not only in ChatGPT, but also in all the other, in the other tools. And so it's more, we see what works. And if we can try to figure out a repeatable recipe, then we will. And it's also more of a personal belief. I rarely click ads. So I choose not to put, too much money in ads, things like that. If someone comes along and wants to partner with us and it's like feels like a right fit, then we will. Otherwise, we won't. So it's not a very scalable way of looking at it. But I guess that's a bit of the luxury position that we're in, because most of the growth is organic and comes from the product itself. So yeah, I didn't really answer your question, but it's a combination of a lot of things.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I guess you also look at, so obviously like new user sign up, but then can you also trace it back to conversion per than people who signed up through a different means?
Yes, we can. Yes, indeed. And so, for example, for a long time, Reddit was the highest converting channel for us because, and again, it comes back to it's people you actually helped. And they just found your solution, and then they're more likely to stay. So we definitely can. That's something we noticed with ChatGPT, is that for us the churn has been a lot higher. So the quality of the leads coming through ChatGPT for us has been lower, which is also, I read a lot of the opposite things from other companies, because we attracted more, I think, B2C users. So we have a B2B and a B2C audience. And we were getting more B2C users through ChatGPT, people that are less likely to pay,
Right.
or they even they upgrade for features that are free, but ChatGPT told them they were paid, and it just hallucinated other pricing plans. So a lot of refunds. So we're in the data now and just trying to understand what is happening. But so it has been great, but it has turned into higher churn, not necessarily the right audience discovering us. Yeah.
And how do you kind of analyze what is the right audience, right? Because as you said, like, I can sign up for Tally using my personal email, but also
Yeah.
my business email. Then either way, you still don't know if I'm using it for my business or for my personal life. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of go about that?
For us, the ideal customer is a small startup that has a simple contact form on their website. It's embedded, it's recurring, it stays there, you're not going to remove it, and it's rather low usage. A customer satisfaction survey that you send out every quarter, asking for product feedback, bug reports, things like that. Usually, smaller teams, but for those teams, especially professional teams, upgrading is usually a no-brainer, because even the paid plan is pretty low. So it's really, we see a couple of groups. You have startups in general. Then you have like creators, one man shows, woman shows, and then there is everyone who fits into consulting, no code agencies, people helping other companies with optimizing their systems. So those are like the three bigger buckets, I would say. And in those groups, we also see that because churn is rather high for all form builders, it's higher than industry benchmarks, because there's a lot of project usage. So you'll use it once for an event or
Right.
whatever, and then you'll stop. And so it's, finding the people that need forms recurringly that are the most interesting for us.
Yeah, as a website form, it's definitely an interesting one. Why should people use? I'm relaunching, working on a new website at the moment, so using Webflow. So why should I, for example, choose Tally? I can answer it, but happy to hear your answers. Why should we embed Tally as a website form over what's already included in the web platform?
Yeah, I think what you see is if it's simple use case, you're probably best off with just the Webflow native forms. What they usually don't offer is the extra functionality that comes with a form builder, which is conditional logic, calculations. You want to accept payments. You want to automatically send emails after someone submits your form. You want to connect it to any of the integrations, Notion, Airtable, Slack, Discord, any of those all come out of the box if you choose a form builder like Tally. So there's a lot more power behind the form, and especially what you do with the data afterwards. And then obviously the design options are pretty advanced, so you can make it blend in so you don't see it's a Tally form, but it's just embedded in your Webflow site. So it depends a little bit. If you're if you're simply collecting one email address and you just want to send it to a Google Sheet or something, you probably don't even need Tally versus your built-in form builder. But for everything else, you will kind of hit limits, at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Just gave me some new ideas. That's good.
We're also GDPR proof, which is
Hey,
for a lot of European companies important. And I believe Webflow forms are not. So that's another reason.
there we go. All right. Yeah, the regulations are always a bit of a minefield in Europe.
Yes, yes.
It's probably also something that you touch upon, no? Like being a global product, potentially
Yeah.
having to keep extending the privacy notice and terms of use of Tally.
And it's funny because I would say, around 50% of our customers are in the States. So the States is our biggest market. And they never ask about any privacy regulation. And obviously the European customers do, have different demands. And it's something that, again, when you start your business, it's a bit of a trade-off. Obviously, you always want to have the best type of security and that data privacy built in. But you also need to decide, okay, when am I going to invest in becoming compliant? And those things take a lot of time and a lot of money. So if you do that in the very beginning, it slows you down. And that's something we couldn't do because we didn't have the initial funds. That's something a VC-backed company can do. So it's actually this year, we will start multiple compliancy tracks to make sure, that we get all our certificates. But we waited with that, and we waited deliberately just because it would slow our product development down. It didn't bother us too much because most of our customers are in the States. But obviously, once you reach a certain scale, you want to make sure that every box is checked, and that's what we're working on right now. But it's something we notice. You need a DPA. You get a lot of questions, a lot of custom security surveys, and if you don't have a person doing that full time, it is pretty hard to offer that service. That's also a reason why we stay away from enterprise plans, because there's a level of a service level that we cannot offer.
Yeah, it would need. You would probably need to hire one service rep or a support person for
multiple
every 100
probably. Yeah,
or even less, maybe even
yeah,
every 10 enterprise or something like that. They would also
indeed.
just acquire it. So yeah, I guess they go to then the other forms out there for
Yeah,
such things.
yeah, indeed.
Amazing. And okay, imagine, Marie, that you had to rebuild Tally from zero today. Which parts of the growth engine do you recreate first and why?
I think we would do it in a pretty similar way. We'd ship fast and keep it free. I would do that in exactly the same way. I think I would think better about content and which pages we create and how we, make those SEO and future proof. I think that's something I would do from the start because I feel like it's kind of a long-term investment. I think we would hire sooner because that's also part of the growth engine. We have to grow the team a bit faster, but that's, easier said in hindsight. But definitely the free tier, keeping things simple, having the virality built in the product that I would 100% just do over
Yeah.
today. Yeah.
Happy founder. That's nice.
Yes.
I mean, that's just, I hear a lot of building while staying true to yourself, right? I guess that's also the reason why still bootstrap, because I'm sure you get offered a lot of money constantly, probably a lot of cold outreach on that front. Amongst
Yes.
others. But yeah, so that's super cool to see. And then one thing that I kind of forgot to touch upon when we were addressing it, but would love to go back to, like, what's kind of the one-on-one on geo or LLM growth, let's say, right? I personally heard, and it kind of was confirmed here, an initial spike, like kind of October 24 until May, June 25, being third-party providers like a Reddit and a
Yeah.
G2 even, etc., being responsible for ranking, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Reddit, think like the whole social listening thing that we did from day one without knowing what the effect would be now has played a huge part. So brand mentions, right? The more you can get your brand mentioned on any platform, that supposedly helps, or that is what we saw helps a lot. I think, and that's something we're not very active in yet, is YouTube and video content, where either content you create yourself or you work with creators, but also having more educational tutorials. And then things like help center content that is in a Q&A shape, where you basically literally answer the long tail or like the prompts that people would ask in a very literal and a very clear way is, I think, also important. What else did we, I think there's definitely also an overlap with just traditional old school SEO, where if you're ranking high, your visibility will also be high. So technical part there definitely as well. But everything that is user generated content, online conversations, brand mentions, PR also kind of plays a role, have sites with large authority or news. Do you have news articles about your startup? Wikipedia, one of the most cited sources. We've tried, we didn't manage yet to get a Wikipedia page for Tally, but that has been a thing. And I mean, it's been a total, I call it a bit the wild, wild west. Like, I read a lot of different things. I'm also not always sure what works and what doesn't. But I think definitely the user generated, the forums, that for sure, everything that is educational and just good content, will work for Google, but will also work well for GEO. And I think, again, learning how people find you. So we also ask in our onboarding survey, if you found us through AI, we ask, what did you ask? And so
Mm,
we're learning about
amazing.
the prompts. And if you learn those, you can probably also learn about the ones where you don't show up and how you can optimize for those. And lastly, listicles. 15 best tools for this, best competitors for this are showing up all the time
Backlinks.
for us, indeed.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So if you can get into those somehow, then I'm sure it helps.
Amazing. So if I understand it well, I mean, it kind of makes sense also. It's
Yeah.
repeating and following the trends of a similar SEO strategy where you're through educational, helpful content, answering questions or responding based on search terms. I think what stands out here also is the answering in a Q&A type of format, like almost as if you're going to play the LLM and tell
Yeah.
the LLM what to return, right? Because,
Yeah.
okay, they are actually being trained on data, right? So you might as well just give
Yeah.
them then the correct data.
Right.
So that's amazing if that works. Definitely will get into that myself. Amazing. So before we wrap up here, I wanted to ask maybe one or two more things. And that would be like, before you started building, did you have any growth assumptions or just assumptions in general regarding SaaS growth that you had to unlearn while you were building?
Not really unlearn, because I was also not really in the space before Tally. I did learn that we were doing a lot of things that went against the playbook. You mentioned Rob earlier, SaaS or starter playbook, that he wrote, giving everything away for free, pricing very low. There's a lot of things that we did in the opposite way. And I feel like I kind of think it's important to mention, because I don't think there is one playbook. I think there's a different path and playbook for a lot of scenarios. And I think that's something I learned throughout the years, is that we might have done things a bit differently, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't work in our situation, right? So I try to stay away from people, mostly on Twitter, sharing like, you should do this, and this, and then you will get to 10 million. Like, I just don't believe that that is how it works usually. So yeah, mainly following our own path.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. I think that's what I admire a lot, and also what makes me proud every time I see a tally form passing through as a user. Then
That's
I've
nice.
seen it also across. I think it started like 2 years ago. I was like, "What? This is from Belgium. This is insane! Like, that's nice. It's here showing up when I'm in the US, or when I'm like filling something in for a Lemlist, for example. I'm like, wow, this is nice."
Yeah, we sometimes get texts like someone is in Australia in a museum. They're like, it's a tally form, to register for some kind of contest. Or we were at the doctor's last month, and you had to like check in, and it was a QR code, and it led to a tally form. And I thought, wow, how crazy is this? So the scale is getting big, and it's really nice to catch some tally forms in the wild once in a
Yeah,
while. Yeah, it makes us proud.
maybe that's a cool creative idea to start
Yes,
catching tally forms in the wild, like
that
they live.
actually, I'm gonna write that down. Yeah,
A tally
that's a good
go
one.
Pokemon style.
Yes, yes,
Amazing.
let's do
Cool.
it.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, one last thing. Is there anything you want to share for the audience, being growth leaders, founders of software products and companies?
Good question. I think I don't like giving advice. What I usually try to do is like, I try to surround myself with people that are a few steps ahead of me. Not like too many steps, but it's mostly people I don't know. I follow people online, read their blogs and their tweets. And it helps me a lot to just keep the pulse and know what's happening, because there's so many things happening. But then once in a while, I also try to shut everything off, because otherwise you're constantly feeling you're running behind.
Mhm.
But I would say, it's something I didn't really do before, but just ask for advice to someone who's a few steps ahead. I think that can make a huge impact. People are usually pretty willing to help, or to give you 30 minutes of their time. Another thing I've noticed is that when we share our story, when we share our revenue graphs, and especially since last year, people say like, wow, that's wild. Like, it took 5 years, that's super long. Nowadays, people go from 0 to 10 million in a week, so to speak. And I think the journey is quite long for a lot of people. And I think a lot of those who do succeed in building a growing business are the ones that show up every day and do the tasks that are not necessarily fun. But if you do it every day, it gets easier. And I think you will see the effect in the long term. So I try to see things in this way, and it's a rather calm way of building in the age of AI. But I think it can be encouraging as well for people that are just starting out and they're seeing all the big numbers.
Yeah.
But like, the one I remember the most is like, I think 8K MRR, feeling like, oh wait, this is like a salary, like this.
Mhm.
But by building something that you made yourself, I think that's a pretty amazing feeling if you can get there.
That's amazing. Definitely. Super. Thanks for sharing your journey and wisdom here. It was also
You're
super
welcome.
inspiring for myself to finally get to talk with someone from where I'm from as well.
Belgium.
Yeah, exactly. Our little Belgium making waves all over the world, from museums in Australia to the local doctors in Belgium. It doesn't get more global than that. So yeah, thank you so much, Marie. Where can people will find you
Yeah,
online on Twitter, LinkedIn, maybe YouTube?
it's tally.so, and my handle is at Mighty Martens on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And most of the things I shared here are documented on the blog, and that's blog.tally.
Thank you so much for coming on, and
Thanks for
take
having
care.
me.
Have a good 2026.
Thank you, you too.